Okay, I think we're live, and this is the second transformation broadcast that we're having today. In other words, the second broadcast where we're going to be talking about transformation as a theme for this year's World Speech Day. My name is Simon Gibson. I'm the founder of World Speech Day. World Speech Day is a day in the year to celebrate speeches and speech making through live public events around the world. Typically, we have events in around 110 nations. This year, rather fewer, for obvious reasons of the effect of coronavirus. But it's given us an opportunity to explore other avenues, such as going online with speeches and speech making. And we've had some really terrific examples over the past few days where event holders have transferred their live event to live stream. As a result of this change, they've had obviously an increased number of people being able to connect with them. So they might have jumped from 40 to 4,000. So the absence of live events is a huge sorrow, but it gives us an opportunity to explore new ways to reach out and perhaps bring online and live stream more into what we do as we go forward. Therefore, it's worth exploring and it's worth bringing in new voices. We've got some interesting contributors this afternoon. Ghislaine Boddington is going to be talking to us about future humans, and I hope that Ghislaine's going to join us very soon. And we have Majd Assi, who is from Damascus, who's going to be talking to us about the changes, the transformation going on in Syrian society. And we've got Patrizio Paoletti, who is in Italy. He's a great seer in Italy, and he's going to be contributing various insights into the profound changes that we need to take place inside of us that will develop and bring transformation outside. And then we have a young lady from Canada who will be talking about transformation and freedom, and then more contributors later on, I hope. Sadly, David Biello, who is the science curator of TED, is caught up in a problem in New York and isn't going to be able to join us right now. Maybe he will later in the afternoon, maybe not. Obviously, all of these things are fluid at the moment, and we've just got to make the best of what we can. And therefore, I'm hoping that Ghislaine will join us pretty soon, and we can begin the broadcast properly. After this broadcast on transformation, we have a second broadcast going out this afternoon at 4 o'clock GMT, and that broadcast is going to be on rhetoric and public speaking, the art of public speaking, and we will be exploring some really fascinating contributions from different contributors in the USA and Latin America and around the world to bring us up to date with some interesting proposals on rhetoric and the art of 21st century speaking. I thought we had Ghislaine then. She appeared briefly, but she appears to have gone. So we'll just maybe wait a 2 moments. I think she's back now. She appears to be back. Let me see if I can put her on the big screen. No. It doesn't appear to be working. So I'm not quite sure whether Ghislaine is going to join us. I suspect she is. She is part of BBC Digital and an expert in future humans and wearable technology. And it's going to be fascinating to get her insights into the way we're all headed, and the way that technology is going to not just transform our lives, but transform us, our very selves. I will hope now that Ghislaine is not experiencing any more technical difficulties and we can get started. Let me just check that she's coming online. Yeah, I think we have technical difficulties, as they say in the trade, that Ghislaine is trying to get online, but there are problems with her camera on her laptop. I'm not sure quite what it is. And therefore we'll just have to hang fire a moment or two while hopefully she gets that connection. And then, as I say, after Ghislaine, we'll be talking to Majd Assi, who personally I'm going to be really thrilled to talk to. Majd is a remarkable young man living in Damascus, and I'm sure he's going to have some amazing insights into life in Damascus, life in Syria, life in the Arab world, and the transformation that's taking place there in Syria. We won't be too beset with any more technical difficulties. We've had our problems through today with lots of people putting out at the last minute because of technical problems, possibly, but also I think really the ongoing impact of coronavirus on people's lives. 16 days ago, maybe less, 14 days ago, we had events like World Speech Day events, that is, in 110 nations, and there are not maybe in the 10s and 20s now are left around the world, and it's been a remarkable impact. And country after country has imposed restrictions on what one would normally consider everyday activities, and forced the closure of schools and universities and speaking clubs and public gatherings, and that of course has had an enormous impact on public speaking itself, which is a shame, because obviously we still believe that it's the best way to share ideas. Public speaking is still at the heart of our communities, it's at the heart of our education system, at the heart of our political systems for many, and particularly obviously in the West, but anyway, largely public speaking drives so much of our lives, and therefore it's always sad and shocking when it's curtailed, even if for medical and obvious reasons of public health. So I'm still waiting on Ghislaine. I think she may not make it. I'm beginning to get that impression. Can I see anything in the chat? No, other than she's having problems, and I'm going to carry on talking about World Speech Day, which is a remarkable success. It's grown from, well, simply an idea to events in over 100 nations in something around 4 years. We've grown because we encourage individual hosts to hold their own events in local areas and schools and so on, and to be responsible for their own event, and to bring in speakers and to attract an audience, and then to share ideas. And whilst it's generally recognized that public speaking is mankind's #1 fear, it appears that when it comes to public speaking in the sense of sharing ideas, people are less confronted by public speaking. They see the value of being able to contribute through the sharing of ideas, and it does seem to be a model that works and that people get pleasure from and enjoyment from, which is obviously absolutely crucial. That the first criterion is that people enjoy World Speech Day events and enjoy being part of them, and across all cultures, in Asia, in the Philippines, in Nigeria, in the Netherlands, across the USA, across Latin America, people share the same pleasure from public speaking and from sharing ideas. And if just one new good idea develops as a result of a World Speech Day event, then probably that's enough justification, in the sense that World Speech Day is always about reaching out to unexpected voices, to people who wouldn't normally make a speech, wouldn't normally contribute to a public speaking event, but who on this particular day have the opportunity to have their voices heard and to have their ideas listened to and hopefully acted upon. So I'm hugely gratified that people take up World Speech Day, come along and speak, come along and listen, come along and take part. And Pache coronavirus, I'm sure that we will go from strength to strength each year as more people join World Speech Day, more people become part of the community, and also more people get the sense that being part of World Speech Day is also, in some sense, an expression of world citizenship, that it goes beyond national boundaries, it goes beyond cultures. It's an activity that joins the world. And one of the things that struck me most forcibly in the past few days is the way that the world has become splintered, that this virus is attacking mankind, all of us, and yet the response has been dramatically national. Each individual nation acts as if it were separate, and I'm sure there are global groups and global concerns who are working perhaps without our knowledge to try and find solutions, but it is nevertheless more obvious that the response is coming from national governments, closing of borders, restriction nationally, and there doesn't seem to be a sufficient global response, or perhaps response is probably unfair, but a sort of global perspective on what's going on, and that's a sad thing. Well, I hope that one of the lessons we get from all of this is that there needs to be a new global order, a new global connectivity, that we can use technology, that we can use new ways to develop a global response and a global sense of togetherness. I think Ghislaine is now probably on board. She was.
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Ah.
Hello, hi.
Hi,
I'm
Ghislaine.
so sorry, I couldn't get my laptop to work for us, so I'm actually on my phone now.
So. Okay. Well, that's very that's very, very neat of foot. But well done, thank you. And is that on the Get Vocal app, or is it just a?
Yes, it's on the Get Vocal app. It's worked better for me than being online on my laptop. So
yeah.
I was so trying to get into it. It's so frustrating. I could see you talking away and mentioning me. But hello to everybody anyway.
Hello, Ghislaine.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I've done enough talking. I'm going to hand over to you for a while. Ghislaine is I suppose expert is always a tough call, but anyway, let's say an expert in future humans and wearable technology. And on this day when we're talking about transformation, that seems to be a pretty potent subject to discuss. So it's a great pleasure to have you here, Ghislaine, and I'm going to ask you to take over and share your thoughts with us.
Fine, Simon. And I'm going to actually continue from some of the things that you've been mentioning. Actually, I've slightly adjusted. As Simon says, my name's Ghislaine Boddington, and I'm creative director of the Body Data Space Collective. We're an interactive design collective. We're 30 or so experts, and we've been focusing on body-centered digital design for many years. We're based in several countries around the world, actually. So we've already put a lot of focus on working virtually, and I'll explain that a bit more later. I also work, as Simon says, as a presenter. I do keynotes all over the world on the future human, and I'm an expert studio expert for the BBC World Service Digital Planet programme, and a reader in digital immersion at University of Greenwich. So today I'm going to be talking to you about transformation and a future human, but I have actually adjusted some of what I'm going to say because of this exceptional and complex scenario that we're all facing right at this moment. And this is a very bizarre time to be living in. I think a time that feels at this point very surreal for many of us, as we adjust physically to what's happening around us, but actually, of course, mentally and in our psychological side, we're still trying to find a way to understand what this means, a time where unusually every human in the world is affected by the same difficult issue, a pandemic virus, COVID-19, because it's universal and it's taking over and it's instantly changing many of our lives. And previously, you know, we've watched from afar and sympathized from afar, many of us, whilst countries distant to us have suffered human created and natural disasters. Obviously, war, famine, hurricanes, recently all the bushfires in Australia, many other horrendous scenarios. But here we are now, all in an extreme situation. It affects every single human being in the world and has consequences for our whole lives. And the message which we're being hearing from governments worldwide is the term is social distancing. Social distancing from each other and from other humans is the advice, and even the law in certain countries in the world already, and may become so in many more. And this is the absolute opposite to our normal daily human behavior and our innate inclination, which is to be in groups and to be in social and physical engagement together, because our human bodies, our naturalness as humans is that we live in close family units and with many friends units. And we show our love and affection for these families and friends through our embraces and our touches and hugs and kisses. And when we meet friends and colleagues, we shake hands and we kiss on the cheek and we do high fives, and we plan and look forward to gatherings of all types, whether they're family meals or weddings and parties and celebrations, and right through to huge sporting and cultural events, many of which we know have already been cancelled across the globe at this point in time. Plus the fact that we are travelling extensively in the 21st century and before, on holidays, on business trips, and every day to work, school, and to visit and care for others. So the directive and enforcements in some countries to stay away from each other are totally contrary to our human nature and to our human need to be with people and to please and be pleased and to laugh and laugh together. And so we actually are at a point in time where we are having to move into a very different communicational mode, one which is actually very reflective of future modes of communication, and one which World Speech Day is already operating within. One which hints strongly at the future world of work and at the future world of learning. But this is like a fast move, a very like a kick up the bum, really, to actually get on with the concepts of virtual physical gathering. And that is a very much a future human way of thinking. In my work as a body technologist, I've been exploring and actioning what I call virtual physical presence. So virtual physical presence since the early 90s. And this has come from my dance training when I was working across the EU and beyond into international workshops and residencies and performances and events. And as performing arts is so collaborative by nature, we really needed to create and rehearse and present together to groups of live audiences. And in the early 90s, Body Data Space started to work with telepresence, very early telepresence, body interactions between studios and stages in different countries, crossing time and space. And that was really to be able to continue the working processes when we couldn't all to be together in the same studio or physically present. But we developed that to link performances and events between 2, 3, 4 spaces simultaneously. And to do this, we really quickly realized that we had to evolve new techniques that enabled us to feel the presence of others, the distant other that was actually not in the same space as us and possibly maybe many miles away, but also not even in the same time zone. So you're crossing time and space, experimenting. And so we created some design processes and methods to try and ensure that good communication would take place. Never the same as the live face-to-face, but how could we get it to be nearly the same, this virtual physical sense? So today, and this is nearly 30 years later, and with many ups and downs on our side, but what we've got to see today now is that many people across the globe do actually connect with each other daily through telepresence for work and for home connections. There are many tools out there available now. We're using one at the moment, which is Let's Get Vocal. And but we know there are web-based and smartphone users using Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, Babel, Crowdcast, BlueJean, Google Hangout, and tools like Microsoft Teams and Slack that let you work online with video, plus chat, plus uploading documents, plus sharing all to each other, just the same way as you do when you work next to each other in your desks. I'm often reminded in my work on telepresence also how many people have to work away from home for long or shorter periods of time. And this has created a telepresence culture within many families where a mum or a dad actually can only join from a different time zone via the laptop screen at breakfast or for supper every day, or to chat with grandparents every weekend who are living in a distant country. So we have seen already across the last 15 years a real development in the human being about to deal with telepresence, and it's moved well beyond video conferencing for businesses, which was really the only availability. Academia and business was where it was placed in the 90s, and quite expensive setups, very rarely available to the public. And now we've got a much stronger sense of our own presence, our virtual presence through video and audio connectivity. So today, in today's world, we will and we do have family members and colleagues who we may never meet. We may never actually physically meet each other. Training often takes place for new recruits of larger companies nowadays in global virtual platforms. If you're learning into teamwork in a business with many global offices, you will potentially already be very used to working with multiple little videos around you of different people and online all day in those environments. And young people are particularly savvy as their use of real-time social media through their different apps, etc., becomes very, very fast and instantaneous, and often only available for seconds online before it actually even deletes itself. And gamers play real time. Gamers are probably a very important group to look at the moment, because their understanding of complex platforms within teams who are online chatting and negotiating and working through, really tight scenarios together to come through in competitive ways often, but to survive, they're the ones that have got this very fast, complex skills in place. I watch and hear my 15-year-old, and he's incredibly adept at working with 25, 30 people very fast online. And many schools have online learning portals already. The virtual learning side and universities has luckily for this particular point in time is pretty well advanced. Yeah. And so suddenly with this complex academic, we've got a new clarity of focus on the real need for hyper-connected virtual presence. And many people are adapting fast and converging tools which are already in use to ensure smooth ongoing connectivity as we move into isolated zones of our homes. And the future human, therefore, is seemingly becoming more physically remote, for a time at least, rather than placing liveness within the natural physical gathering places of our long-term evolution. We now must shift our gathering to online real-time platforms while we deal with this world crisis. Now, this can, of course, be very positively implemented. And I wonder how much more inclusive knowledge sharing and exchange can happen when placed in this digital context. I mean, today is an example, Simon, where you've got a wide group of people who can engage in World Speech Day, who often possibly couldn't travel due to many reasons to physical conferences or events. And we're radically shifting our carbon footprint also at the same time as flights, etc., and travel are stopped at this point in time. Many business and academics spend their lives on the road or in the sky. So if we look at social distancing protocols, but actually we shift our thinking more to virtual presence design, I think we will find that our learning during this period will be very useful even when we're back in physical contact again. And that future events will always now be a mix between this virtual and physical presence, allowing pre, during and post-event scenarios of knowledge exchange and sharing to be actually more easily put into place and implemented. So when we're using telepresence, there are several factors to look at in relationship to our body. And not so easy for me to demonstrate this at the moment on this little small mobile screen, but we do need to keep a good energy in our voices, in our tone of voices, and to use our facial and gestural expressions as much as possible. This is part of our natural way of being in the world. So we need to remember body language is no less important when we're talking telepresence wide to 1 or 50 people at the same time. And we need to really understand that possibly we need to make our points even more clearer and stronger than in physical meetings. So doing something straight from the neck up like this is not easy. Yeah, we actually do review our physical body language very much when we're online. And if we don't try and shift into a slightly more open, generous way of talking in the virtual world, then our encounters from this will be colder and harder to engage in during the virtual event. And so we need to try and make these memorable events. And we know that true eye contact with many of the baseline tools and applications is very hard to actually enable. So that whole thing of eyeballing, or the one-to-one that you get when you really look into someone's eyes, yes, is possible in the top end, absolute top end telepresence suites in big companies, etc. But through basic screen transmission like this, when I can open my eyes wide and look straight at the camera, are very hard to maintain. But I think we must try at least to be effective on this and to develop authenticity and trust online as soon as a group convenes, to make a warm involvement as we can. And as many will find transmission mode anxiety making. Maybe not so much younger people, but my age group and older, it's not such a normal scenario yet. We're still very aware of how we look and talk and feel online. And as Simon mentioned, just coming to the end here, we have seen many conferences going right online straight away. I must have had 25 notices on Friday and today alone. And some of them coming through with very, very inventive ways of actually enabling their full-on 3 days conference to be completely streamed, and some of them with interactivity coming into play too. But I think we'll see in the next few months these become much more sophisticated, where you definitely will be able to not just see the keynote speaking, but actually to join into small group webinars, to have one-to-ones, to actually still do business meetings in the middle of that 2 or 3 day conference, chat rooms, interactivities of all types. And I look forward to seeing the inventiveness that will come up from the event creators into how we will create a much more trustworthy and intimate scenario through this point in time. As I mentioned, I think, World Speech Day, this is very timely. In a way, has been ahead of the times, already streaming across the globe. But the key thing is that even if we can't be together physically, we must, and it's even more important than ever, to share ideas and exchange knowledge and to move forward positively together to solve this problem and to make sure that we have a positive world for our children and grandchildren, maybe a much more virtual physical world. But how can we make this as positive as it has been for us in the past? Thank you.
Wow, Jelaine, that was a real tour de force, just magnificent. So I'm glad that you made your Get Vocal app work, because we'd have missed out on a huge amount then, and so many kind of thoughts springing around like electricity in the air. One of the things that occurred to me while we're talking is that about this virtual presence thing is that now it's my experience of it is currently is one-to-one. I'm talking to you and you're talking to me. What we're losing is the audience. We're losing the sense of an audience and the sense of a collective mind that's going on within a presentation. And when one talks about public speaking, for me, one of the fascinating things is, how do you create an audience? How do you turn the number of people who are sitting in front of you into an audience who think and share and collaborate mentally within that piece? And I just wondered if you kind of got any thoughts on this kind of, how do we get an audience feel into this virtual world? Because if we don't have that, I think we lose an enormous amount. There's something that goes on, some magic when you have an audience.
Yes, you're completely right, Simon. And I think that we will never replace that absolute specialness of liveness, of talking, one person talking to us, giving us incredible insight and knowledge, the energy that can come from that. For me, performing arts is a live act, yeah, and therefore that's partly why our work started to really look in the 90s at what is liveness, what is presence, how do we actually start to make sure that liveness and presence are at the center of our digital developments, because it's the most important thing about being human.
Yeah.
So I don't think we will ever replace that liveness with the virtual. What I think we will see is some quite complex and sophisticated patterns of involvement and interactivity come into place.
Yeah.
So, for example, it might be that you were going to do a day conference with 60 people about, say, an issue around data privacy, but we can't do that anymore. We have to cancel it, but it's in a couple of months' time. So how could we start now to actually get those 60 people who are potentially mainly self-isolated at home and within their families now to start to prepare for that day? And not cancel a day, keep the day as an online day, but to start to prepare for that day on some of the issues and topics that will come up by putting forward questions in advance, by adding, say, some of their own writing and blogs and papers to a pool, which can be read by various people in advance, by maybe meeting in small groups in advance to talk out particular issue areas, say, on data privacy, like health and governments and what they do about data privacy, and what we do about data ownership and identity in those areas. Yeah. And then on the day itself, we may actually find, therefore, that the content of the day is extended and even better than actually it would have been, because the common base of knowledge is pre-developed through the virtual interactions leading up to that event, that digital event. And so when we come together virtually on the day, we may actually be at a place where the speakers and the panels are referring into small group discussions that have happened prior to the day, where everybody had access to those as well. And then actually after an event, there's no need for it to stop. And this already happens with some conferences and symposiums where beyond the event itself, of course, working groups and people working into particular issues that need to be developed for the next conference actually continue, yeah? And we could see particular issues coming from the virtual conference day, which would be picked up by the conference developers and said, right, let's continue with this now. Everybody's self-isolated. We're going to do something once a week, which continues this conference beyond today.
Yeah.
So I'm just writing up a blog on this, actually, which I will be putting up onto LinkedIn this week sometime, and on my speaker's site, GuylainneBoddington.com, because I think that we need to be really creative at this point to make sure that we don't lose connectivity to each other, that we don't lose this opportunity to even possibly extend knowledge transfer and exchange, and actually potentially be more inclusive to a wider range of people than, as I mentioned, than are able to often go to conferences due to finance, travel restrictions, mobility, family life, etc. Yeah. So we'll see a shift happening in that way.
It feels like you're saying that the current crisis, although it might last, let's hope that it lasts a short window of time, but it is actually a window onto how we are going to have to become more. This is but a kind of a glimpse to the future.
Yes, I really do think so. I think, we've got many other issues in the world, climate change being one of them. We know we've got to fly less and travel less. Yeah, we know we've got to stop using this world so badly. Yeah. And, I've spent my life traveling around the world to talk at various conferences, to run workshops, to run residencies. And, it's been amazing. But actually, it's been over the top, yeah? I'd have much preferred to have maybe done 5 trips a year rather than 25. and I've been very happy to have joined in this kind of conversations and more sophisticated versions of them, and spent more time with my family.
Yeah. Well, Ghislaine, thank you very much. I mean, I think we'll be revisiting a lot of this and discussions with you in the coming days and weeks, but it's been great to have you on now and to get your contribution, a real set of eye-openers, and just thank you so much for taking the time to join.
No problem. Thank you for setting it up, Simon. It's very important that we all can hear and feel each other at a distance, and I will be staying online and listening to the other speakers this afternoon.
Great. Well, we've got the transformation piece going on, and then after that we've got a piece on rhetoric and public speaking, and I'm fascinated by the crossover between the two.
Yes,
it's really interesting. I was talking to a young to a guy who organizes children's charities around the world, and the way that public speaking is an incredibly important part of charity work, not for the aid workers, but for the people who are coming up with ideas. And in many rural communities, literacy, they have very poor literacy rates, but they share ideas through public speaking, through oracy. So it's this kind of event is worthwhile in a sense that it shines a spotlight onto how public speaking can help in transformation.
Absolutely. And hopefully what emerges is a whole set of new, young, transformative speakers who help us all move forward positively.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. And then I'm going to introduce Majd now from Damascus, and I'm going to be fascinated to see Majd. I hope he's there. I'm not sure if he's there, but we'll hope so. Can you join us, Majd? He's talking to me in chat, so it may be that Majd has got a problem with connectivity. Let me just see whether he's able to join us. The cam isn't working, Majd, but the audio might be. Are you able to join us, Majd? Sounds like we've got audio from you. But I'm not sure that I'm not sure you're there, Majd. Are you there, Majd? Akinti is there, but she's gone. Just hang with us because if Majd can't join us, I can bring in Akintia to discuss her topic from Canada. Doesn't look like it. That's a shame. Majd is in Damascus. So totally understandable that there might be the odd technical hiccup, and I'm sure he'll get it sorted in a mo. If he doesn't, then we'll move on. But it's I'm so looking forward to speaking to Majd. So we're going to give him plenty of time to grab his spot and see if other people can join us. I'm not sure who that is, but it's not Majd. So I think what we're going to do perhaps is ask Akintia to join us ahead of time, and I'll Oh, we can go. Hang on a minute. I think we can go with Patrizio. I think Patrizio is here, so we'll go with Paoletta. Ah, great. Okay. So,
Okay.
we've got. I'm going to put you on the floor. We've got on the bottom here. We've got Patrizio and Marielle. Marielle is a translator, and Marielle needs to turn her mic on.
Here I am. Hi.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Lovely. Okay. Well, we've got this is another first that we've got the technology really going for us. But Patrizio is right here. Patrizio Paletti is the head of the Patrizio Paletti Foundation in Italy. And he's going to be talking about within and without and the transformation that goes on within, determining the transformation that goes on without. He is going to speak in Italian, and he's going to have a translator, Marielle, who's going to be doing his his words for him alongside his own speaking. So I'm actually all in favor of this because I've always felt the World Speech Day should be in all languages. And as our last contributor, Ghislaine, was saying, this is an insight into how we're going to have to communicate and develop, and how the future is already here in these difficult times. And so I'm delighted that Patrizio has had the foresight to try out a very unusual experiment of live streaming with a translator. And it's a great pleasure to have you here.
Allora, grazie a tutti e speriamo che vada tutto per il meglio e che le cose che vi dirò possano interessarvi.
So thank you to everyone, and I hope this will go as well as possible and that the things that I will share can be of interest to you.
Allora, pochissimi passaggi centrali. Siamo in un momento storico molto particolare per la nostra specie, per la nostra esistenza. Questo coronavirus sta rendendo la vita meno abituale del solito.
So just a few initial points, that we're in a very particular historic moment where the coronavirus is making a serious situation for our lives.
Ma questo è soltanto un momento della nostra storia, è un attimo della nostra storia. La nostra storia è molto più lunga di questo momento, è molto più complessa di questo momento.
But this is just one moment of our history, it's a small piece of our history, which indeed is much, much longer than this specific moment.
E le persone con cui chiacchiero abitualmente mi fanno molte domande in questo momento, si chiedono qual è il futuro possibile, se c'è un futuro possibile per la nostra specie e quali sono le regole che lo permetteranno.
And the people that I speak with regularly ask me these questions. They ask, but is there a possible future for us? And if there is, what are the rules that will govern it?
Così è per le migliaia di studenti della mia scuola di autoconsapevolezza, così è per tutti gli speech che vado a fare in giro per il mondo. Le persone hanno questa domanda ben presente nella loro vita e nella loro testa in questo momento.
And it's like this both for the thousands of students in my school of self-awareness and also the many people that in the events that I go to, people are asking themselves this question: is there a future for our species?
Allora io parto sempre da questa idea, al di là del fatto che dobbiamo avere la certezza che ci sia un futuro per la nostra specie, altrimenti nulla varrebbe la pena che fosse, non ci sarebbe un motivo per continuare a esistere, a impegnarsi, a vivere, a trasformarsi.
So I would start from the point that of course there must be a possible future for us, because otherwise there would be no reason to continue to live, to make efforts to transform ourselves.
La mia esperienza mi dice che il nostro futuro possibile è nella nostra capacità propria della nostra specie, della mente astratta e di prefigurare.
And I say that our possibility to have this future is really in the characteristic of our specific species, which is to envision, the ability of envisioning.
Questa capacità che la neuroscienza ormai da più di 40 anni cerca di indagare, perché è veramente la particolarità che ci contraddistingue. È una capacità meravigliosa, ma anche poco ancora utilizzata da noi.
And this aspect, which neuroscientists have been researching for the last 40 years, it is something that is still not so known by us, so our ability to envision the future.
Infatti noi riusciamo a vedere le tre cose più semplici del mondo. La prima, noi non esistiamo per noi stessi, ma esistiamo in un ecosistema, in un ambiente, la relazione con l'ambiente.
And we have difficulty in being aware of these three things. The first is that we don't exist by ourselves. We exist in relation, first of all, to our environment.
La seconda, siamo interdipendenti come specie, non possiamo essere autosufficienti, quindi la relazione è fra noi come specie.
And then the second is that we are interdependent as a species. We can't exist in ourselves. And so we must pay attention to the relationship between us as a species.
E la terza, che siamo abituati a trascurare ancor più delle prime due, la relazione con noi stessi. Noi abbiamo bisogno di incontrare noi stessi.
And the third is the one that we are less used to doing, which is to consider the relationship with ourselves. We need to have a